Okay. Hello, everybody. I think we are live everywhere. I see people are joining. Okay. I need to turn down my volume. I apologize. Okay. All right. It's great to see everybody here tonight. I'm just going to make sure that we are streaming everywhere, and I think that we are. So I'm just going to head on over to our Facebook group to take a look at the questions that people have posted there, and then we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. All right. All right, I think we're set. Okay, thank you all so much. Just to introduce myself, my name is Dr. Jessica Freedman. I am a physician. I am a former medical school admissions officer, a former residency admissions officer and leader in the residency at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. That is where I did the majority of my academic work. And I founded MedEdits, where you are now, about, I don't know, more than 15 years ago. And I have been working with MedEdits ever since. And, and I have a terrific team of former medical school admissions officers, as well as former residency admissions officers. And we help a huge spectrum of students who are aiming for all types of schools and all types of programs. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, and if you are not aware of our Facebook group, I encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's free, and I am on the Facebook group every single day answering questions, and all of our lives are also streamed there. So if you are not a member, I encourage you to go ahead and join, and we will actually, I will post the link right now for everybody. And okay, yes. And here we go. That's the link to our Facebook group. And if you have any, I don't spend, the majority of our time here talking about services or what we offer our students. But if you have any interest in learning more about us and how we work with students, how we can help you, please sign up for a free 15-minute consultation to speak with us. I just want to, chime in and just sort of say, our students are doing super well this year. We are so proud of all of you. We've had some incredible medical school acceptances. Many of our students have already committed to their medical schools. They know where they are going to absolutely attend. We have some students who are accepted to medical schools and are maybe waiting on one or two wait lists to see if those convert to acceptances. We don't expect that to happen probably until the beginning of May. It's possible it may happen a little bit sooner, but usually those start to convert in early May. And our Residency Match applicants also did incredibly well this year, matching into a wide spectrum of specialties from dermatology, anesthesiology, orthopedic surgery, internal medicine, emergency medicine. We worked with students across many, many different specialties. So we're super proud of everyone who is, kind of wrapping up their season. And we are also, very proud of our students that we're working with now, who are getting ready to apply. AMCAS opens May 1st. So if you don't have that date on your calendar, please put that date on your calendar. You won't be able to submit on May 1st. You can submit your application at the end of May. I believe the date is May 28th. I need to double check that. But when AMCAS opens, you can go ahead and you can open up the application. You can start filling in all of your basic information as well as your coursework. So we encourage students to do that to get ahead on the process. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over to our Facebook group. I ask people, especially if they aren't going to be able to attend the live and they're going to be watching it later, I ask people to post questions on Thursdays, and I answer those, and I start with those before everyone, arrives and starts posting their questions from wherever they are. So let's get started with those questions now. So and what I'm going to do is, so that everyone can see the questions, is I am going to post them into the chat so you can all see the questions that are being asked and that I'm going to be answering. This is a great question, and it's a great question because it is based on one of my videos, which, I think I did this video maybe a year or two ago. We can put the link to it. Still a very, very relevant video. I recently, started, I'm going to be revising my medical school admissions book. And as I'm reviewing my last edition, which I completed in 2019, it reminds me that so much has not changed. that things really, there are subtleties that change from year to year, but overall things have really not changed very much. Let me see who asked this question so I can call you by name. So Ronald asks a great question. He asks, one of your videos mentions a 24-hour minimum for shadowing. Is an example of this 8 hours each day over 3 days? If so, this number seems low compared to your STAR students at 400 to 1,000 hours. So in this video, what I talk about is MedEdit STAR students. These are students who have accumulated, without checking a box, but who have accumulated a lot of hours in their experiences. And by accumulating those hours, they're not just collecting hours, they're actually making really significant and impactful contributions to whatever the activity is that they are engaged in. So our STAR students, typically will have experiences that, they have, 1,000+ hours in something, and whatever that is that they are completely devoted to. Now, the issue with shadowing is we don't encourage students to have hundreds of hours or thousands of hours of shadowing, because that will not help the student in the medical school admissions process. And frankly, for most students, it's going to be really boring, because when you are shadowing, it is a very passive activity. You're not actively taking care of patients. And so this is why we do not recommend having hundreds and hundreds of hours of shadowing. It's fine to have hundreds and hundreds of hours of other activities and other experiences where you're really deeply involved and you're making a really significant contribution to whatever it is you are a part of. But we don't want students gaining a ton of hours through shadowing. I don't know if there was ever a time, frankly, that that students were going to do well by having thousands of hours of shadowing, again, because it's a very passive activity. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and answer this question. Okay, this question is from Dawn, and Dawn says, thank you for the advice on the LOI, which is a letter of intent. My daughter got an acceptance and received the HPSP scholarship for the Navy. Now what? I guess the process of bettering her resume starts all over again. Okay, first of all, I am so happy that the LOI worked. We definitely find that when students are waitlisted, that really powerful letters of intent help to move the needle in getting students off a waitlist. So that's fantastic. And I'm so happy that that was useful to you. So yes, the clock starts over whenever you start whatever your next phase of education is. So now that your student is going to be a medical student, they need to start thinking about what specialty they want to pursue. Medical schools want you and encourage you to enter medical school with an open mind. They don't want you to know what specialty you want to pursue necessarily. But it's sort of a double-edged sword, because what happens is then if you're applying to a specialty, a very competitive specialty in particular, those specialties want to know that you are committed to their specialty. Just like when you were applying to medical schools wanted to see evidence for your interest in medicine. By the same token, residency programs want to see that you have demonstrated interest and evidence for your interest in that specialty. So this is why we encourage students to continue shadowing, to continue gaining exposure to different specialties in medicine, because most of your time, your clinical time as a medical student, is going to be spent in your core specialties. So pediatrics, internal medicine, family medicine, psychiatry, surgery, OBGYN, And I think I missed something. But anyway, you spend most of your time in your core specialties. You're not necessarily getting as much exposure to sort of the smaller specialties, ophthalmology, dermatology, plastic surgery. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we want you to be gaining that exposure to figure out what it is you might want to pursue as soon as you are a medical student. Now, in terms of the actual experiences you should get involved with, you shouldn't only be studying, you should get involved with something, but it isn't the same there are not the same criteria as there are when you're applying for medical school. You don't need to sort of have this wide range of activities. Many pre-med students, very much on the pre-med track, they get to medical school and they assume that they need to be doing the same amount of activities and they need to be involved in the same way. And that simply isn't the case. So yes, you want to be doing something, you want to find things that interest you, but ultimately you want to hone in and zero in on the specialty that you're going to want to be pursuing. And then you're going to be wanting to get involved in activities that are somehow related to that specialty. Okay. And if you have more specific questions as your student goes through medical school, please join us here, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Okay. All right. Okay, Julia has a question here. All right. So Julia asks, my son currently has 1 acceptance and 2 waitlists, one of which is his top choice. Is plan to enroll mandatory by May 1st? If he submits plan to enroll by May 1st, will the waitlist schools be able to see? If he does nothing, will his acceptance be rescinded? Okay, so when you are deciding where to attend, the AAMC, this is the Association of American Medical Colleges for allopathic medical schools, does have rules that you need to follow in terms of communicating to your medical schools. So as of April 15th, students can only hold 3 acceptances. As of May 1st, students can only be holding 1 acceptance. At that point, the student needs to identify that one school is the place where they plan to enroll, PTE, as this writer writes in. So they need to commit to one medical school and they need to plan to enroll to that medical school. However, as long as they have not selected commit to enroll or CTE, they are not completely 100% committed to that medical school. Every medical school has its own timeline for when the student needs to commit to enroll. For most medical schools, that's going to be 3 weeks before orientation starts. So at that point, so what you need to do, Julia, or what your son needs to do is for that 1 acceptance, you need to find out what the commit to enroll date is for that one school. And he is allowed to take a waitlist offer from his other schools, especially the one that is his top choice. If the other one is not necessarily a top choice, maybe he pulls himself off of that waitlist. But he can take an offer from a waitlist up until the commit to enroll date for the school at which he is accepted. So these are really important terms to know and to understand. So plan to enroll is not a commitment. Commit to enroll is your commitment. And at that point, once you select and once you've committed to enroll at a given medical school, you are required to withdraw your other applications. And at that point, that's the school that you will be attending. Schools can see if you are holding other, if you've planned to enroll, they can see if you've planned to enroll, but I don't believe that they can see where you have planned to enroll as of May 1st. So I think that answers that question. Okay. These are good questions today on the board. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead now to everyone who is live now, and I'm going to start answering those questions. Regina asks, what are applications for medical school due this year? When are they due? So we don't talk about due dates because due dates, are essentially, I think of them as deadlines, and medical schools will have deadlines, but we don't want you following those deadlines. We want your due date to ideally be as close to the date that the application is set to open. So for submission. So for example, AMCAS, which is the allopathic application service, opens May 1st, but you can't submit that application until the end of May. So in the ideal world, we want you submitting that application by the middle of June, because the later that you submit, then the longer it takes you to get verified, and then the longer it takes for you to be evaluated by the admissions committees. There is no question that submitting early leads to better results. That's just the way it is. Okay. Okay, Regina asks, does it help for a student to take a gap year to get their EMT certification and experience? Not sure if it's too late. Okay, so when we are helping students to decide whether or not taking a gap year is a good idea, we look at many, many factors. We look at their academic record, we look at their GPA, we look at their MCAT. Those are always going to be sort of the fundamental pieces of a medical school application. Then we're looking at the other experiences that the student has had. Where have they spent most of their time outside of the classroom? Not everybody who gets into medical school has hands-on clinical experience. Some students, have amazing experience in research, or other students may have some incredible community service, related to public health, or maybe to global health, or maybe to helping underserved communities. So we discourage a checkbox type of approach to deciding what experiences a student should be getting involved with. Instead, we want to look at what the student's interests are and how are they going to explore those interests on both, an extracurricular level as well as on a scholarly level. So we wouldn't necessarily say everyone should be an EMT. I mean, that's not the case. Let's say somebody had already demonstrated an interest in pre-hospital care, or maybe they had done some research in emergency medicine or in trauma or something like that. Then for that student who's already sort of demonstrated that interest in, things related to pre-hospital care, then getting an EMT certification could be a great option for them. So, it really, really depends on the student. And this is why we never kind of give these one size fits all type of recommendations. Oh, this is so nice, Yas. I am so proud of your son. So Yas says, Dr. Freedman, my son committed to Drexel BSMD. That is amazing. We are so proud of him. And I want to thank you all for the questions and guiding us as needed. I appreciate you. I appreciate you too. And that is so nice. And this type of news, makes our day. So between this and then the other student who followed our advice on the LOI and got accepted to medical school, these are two great medical school acceptances and people who got all of their information, from these Q&As. So that is amazing. And I'm super proud of him. And Drexel is a great college and it's a great medical school. So, that's a win-win. And he gets to be in Philadelphia, which I think is a fantastic city in which to be both an undergraduate student as well as a medical student. So that is just awesome. I'm super happy about that. All right. For pre-med, is it reasonable to only consider a school with early assurance programs? Are there any early assurance programs you recommend? All right. So early assurance programs are programs that students will typically apply to when they are sophomores in college. There are a lot of not a lot, there are some undergraduate colleges that have early assurance programs, but those early assurance programs are only for their own undergraduates. So I'm thinking of Tufts, I'm thinking of Georgetown, I'm thinking of BU. Every year there are more undergraduate colleges that start early assurance programs only for their undergraduates. It's important when you are deciding on your college, if that's a path that you are considering, that you really find out if the school is willing to give it to you, that you really find out the data on those early assurance programs, how many students are accepted, how many students apply, are they sort of trying to target a specific type of student or specific demographic through that early assurance program? This type of information might frankly be very, very difficult to get. I can tell you we have worked with some exceptional students who are not accepted to their college's early assurance program, which makes me think that it's very possible that these programs are in part used to try to capture some students that might reflect the institutional priorities for that institution in terms of the types of students that they want to get into their medical school. Now, there are other early assurance programs. The most popular one is FlexMed at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, where I used to work. Every year we work with students who apply to FlexMed. Who just getting an interview to FlexMed is a huge, huge accomplishment. And so FlexMed is open to everybody. So that is a program that anybody from any undergraduate institution can apply to. It is so incredibly competitive, but I think sometimes we have students that we'll talk to even before they're starting college, and they know that they want to go for FlexMed in the middle of their sophomore year. So they really hit the ground running their freshman year of college in terms of making sure that they're, getting those research experiences, doing really well academically, and, that they're ready to really put forth the best application possible for that program. Okay. For clinical experience, does it have to be a paid job? Can volunteering with clinical experience at a doctor's office be okay? Does a father's medical office clinical experience have any weight? Okay, so first of all, clinical experience does not have to be paid. You do not need to have a job if you are taking care of patients. If whatever you are doing, whether it is a community service, a volunteer experience, or whether it is a paid position, if you are taking care of patients, then that is patient care. It doesn't, we certainly work with a lot of physicians' children who are going into medicine. And I can tell you that just about all of them, if they have a parent who is practicing medicine, just about all of them are doing something at some point with their parents. So if your student is allowed to or is able to, let's say, be a medical assistant for your father's, for their father's practice, or they're able to take care of patients, that is absolutely allowed. Sometimes when we're completing the application, we might put down a different contact so it isn't sort of so obvious. But I can tell you that it is, parents getting opportunities for their children. This is common at the undergraduate level. This is common at the graduate level. We all want the best for our students. So if we have resources for them to get the experiences that they want, we help our kids. So that's, that certainly is completely acceptable. Absolutely. Okay. Does attending classes at a non-accredited college have a negative impact on the pre-med process? Because my daughter wants to pursue certification as a medical assistant to gain experience and have clinical exposure. So I assume that you're talking about getting your medical assistant certification at a non-accredited college. I think that's what you're asking me. So if you could just clarify that, I'm happy to answer. That would not be an issue. I mean, I would not, I'd like to know what the non-accredited college is. I would not recommend taking your medical school prerequisites at a non-accredited college. But if you are thinking about, getting a medical assistant certification, and that is accepted in the state where the student's going to be working as a medical assistant, that's completely okay. Regina asks, is 1 year of part-time research experience enough? Again, we don't look at this in terms of, is this enough? That's taking sort of a very, mechanized sort of approach to a student's medical school candidacy. Instead, we want to know what that research was in. Did that research relate to the student's interest? What are the students' goals? Are they aiming for a top tier allopathic medical school, or are they aiming for an osteopathic medical school? All of these things are going to guide our recommendations. Certainly, we've had students who have that much research, working part-time for a full year, and they, end up with, let's say, like, probably somewhere between 300 and 500 hours of research, and they excel in other ways, and they get accepted to allopathic medical school. So again, there's never a one size fits all type of answer to this question. Is it tough for direct BSMD students to find a residency match? No, once a BSMD student is in the medical school, they're a medical student along with everyone else who did not go the BSMD route as part of that medical school. So, you need to look at that medical school's matches, and you need to look at their match list to get a sense of where their students are matching. But they are a full-fledged medical student at that medical school. And so they have, they're not penalized at all. They're considered right along with everybody else. Okay, that's a good question. Where can I find a list of medical schools data such as requirements and acceptance rates? So the MSAR, Medical School Admissions Requirements, it's a database. It's online, and I recommend anyone who is interested in going to medical school that they get access. The data is overwhelming. In fact, I was having a consultation with a family today, and we screen shared looking at the MSAR. The data in the MSAR is daunting, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to know what is the important data and exactly where to look for things, but you'll get the hang of it pretty easily. There's also a document that is put out by the Association of American Medical Colleges. I'm going to see if I can find it right now, and I'll post it. And it's a PDF, and it actually gives a lot of information. Maybe what I'll do is I'll look for that later and I'll post it, and then that way everyone can have access to it. But it's a great document because it's in a single document. It tells you what every medical school's requirements are, and that's in terms of allopathic medical schools. Okay. This is a long question, so I apologize for cutting off my face. Okay. Would you please clarify how having a committee letter differs from the process of submitting letters of recommendation? Is this letter in addition to the up to 6 letters of recommendation the student would ask from the professors or mentors? If a student's school offers a committee letter, generally school sends it by August 30th. Would that be timely for getting secondaries and interviews? Also, is there ever a situation where it might be advisable for a student not to get a committee letter? Okay, so I think that they actually cut you off here. This is so long. Okay, this is an important question. And I'm going to take it down so my face isn't cut off. Okay, first of all, in terms of does the committee letter count as a letter? That is going to in part depend on how your medical school collects letters of recommendation. Sometimes the medical school is going to send a committee letter, and that committee letter is going to be part of a letter packet that is sent to all the medical schools. If it isn't, then every medical school is going to have its own requirements for how many letters you are allowed to send, and if that committee letter is considered a single letter. For most, it's going to be considered a single letter. Now, the other part of this question, and this is something that makes me absolutely crazy, but there are some undergraduate colleges that do not send out their committee letters until August. And I can tell you that, yes, this definitely makes students late in the process because the medical schools will not necessarily review the application until that committee letter has been received. I can tell you there is one major undergraduate institution, very prestigious, and this school always sent out late committee letters, and it made me nuts. And they have finally done away with their committee letter. Thank goodness. So if your school has a committee letter, it doesn't look so great if you don't have it. Sorry for the double negative. So if your school has a committee letter, you want to have a committee letter as part of your letter portfolio. That said, I would encourage you to speak to the head of pre-med advising at whatever this medical school, whatever this undergraduate college is. You need to start pressuring them to change that date and to get those committee letters in early, because yes, this is detrimental to their students. There are some colleges who think, well, we are X college and our students are all fantastic. It doesn't matter if our committee letters go out late, but it does matter. And I would recommend bumping up that concern. If you're not getting the answer you want, for example, from the pre-med advisor, then talk to the dean of students, bump up the concern, because I can tell you it is an issue. And this is something that we have to help students navigate every single year. And I wish that if schools would have, if schools insist on having committee letters, then I wish that they would get them out in a timely fashion. Otherwise, just get rid of the committee letter, because you're not doing your students a service by having it. Okay. It's a good question. Do you know the national median GPA and MCAT for this admission cycle? We don't know it yet because it's not over. This cycle is, still very much in process, and there's still some students who don't have any acceptances who are going to get accepted off waitlist. So it's still a little early to have that data. We don't know yet. Okay. How do community college non-major classes in summer appear on a med school application? Son is thinking of statistics and sociology. He's a neuroscience major at a university. So those are still, you're going to have to get a transcript from that community college, and those classes are going to be listed on the transcript when he applies to medical school, and they will be factored into his GPA. It will list, at what college he took those classes, and that college will also be listed, on his list of schools attended. So it basically just gets factored in, and it appears on the application exactly as it appears on the transcript. Linda asks, how do you know if your school has a committee letter? So I would encourage, if you don't know if your school has a committee letter, this is generally common knowledge among the pre-med students. Otherwise, I encourage your student to go to the pre-med advising office, or to call the pre-med advising office, or to email them and just ask, do we have a committee letter? You might even ask, if we have a committee letter, when is that generally sent to the medical schools when I apply? And you could even ask, are we still going to have a committee letter in 2 years? Maybe not. Maybe don't ask that. But, that just get in touch with the pre-med office. And a lot of committee letter questions today. This is great. Is a committee letter from the applicant's school, is it helpful? That really depends on the school. I can tell you that most medical school admissions officers are going to put much more weight on the students' letters of recommendation than they will on a committee letter, because committee letters are often written by one person. They're writing, 50, 60, 70 letters, and it's really just a summary of the applicant. There are some committee letters that are more thoughtful, where the individual actually really tries to get to know the student, and sometimes they can offer some insight. But if you're putting together a really comprehensive application, in terms of your personal statement, in terms of your application entries, and as well as your secondary essays, I can almost guarantee that there is nothing in the committee letter that is going to really move the needle with regards to your candidacy. If there's something that maybe the committee letter writes, that the committee letter writer writes something that maybe you don't want admissions committees to know about, or you didn't know that it was going to be in your committee letter, that's the one time when we see that committee letters can be really influential and in a negative way. So for example, let's say the student had an institutional action or something of that nature, and they were told that this wasn't going to appear anywhere on their record, and somehow it appears on the committee letter, and the student didn't know it was going to appear on the committee letter. These are things that, that sometimes can surprise students, or if there is, if the student had some type of institutional action or academic misstep as an undergraduate, we want to know, how is it going to be written about in the committee letter? What are they going to say? How are they going to explain that? And this is something that we've helped many, many students navigate, and how to communicate with their committee and with their pre-med advisor, and figuring out how it's going to be presented, and to make sure that sort of everything matches up, so there are no question marks when someone's reviewing the application. How many letters of recommendation are needed for medical school? So we recommend a minimum of 4 letters of recommendation, 2 science letters, 1 non-science letter, and then 1 letter, hopefully from a principal investigator. But again, it really depends on the student. It depends on what their experiences are. It depends on what type of college they went to, and if they really got to know their professors, and how many people, they really feel can write them outstanding letters of recommendation. Sometimes this is also going to depend on how many gap years the student has taken and what those gap year positions have been. So, there are a lot of variables here. We have had students, I'd say the max number of letters we've had a student send is 6 letters. That's unusual. That's somebody who has had, out of school experiences that they need to, kind of get endorsements for. And so that sort of is often what bumps up the number of letters of recommendation. Keep in mind that some medical schools are going to have limits in terms of the numbers of letters of recommendation that they want you to send. Okay. Okay. Will the colleges focus on the student stories or experiences shared in the essays, or will they give importance to the grammar and how well it is written in English? They care about the content. They care about the authenticity. They care about the stories and the narrative. And this is something, that we really encourage our students to be cognizant of, especially in the world of Chat GPT. We don't want things to be overly perfect. We don't want things to be, we don't want your documents to win, Pulitzer prizes, right? Unless you happen to be an outstanding writer, and that's evidenced by other things on your application. But they're not paying attention to things being absolutely pristine in terms of the writing. We want the writing to be in the student's voice, because what happens is, if you have an over-edited document, a document that is perfect, then sometimes, if that's not how you write, that's probably not how you speak. And then what happens is, when you go on an interview, sort of your interview skills, or not your skills, but your interview, how you speak, how articulate you are, it doesn't necessarily reflect how you wrote your documents. And sometimes that mismatch can actually, cause a problem for the student. Even they might not even know it, right? And it might not even, sometimes the interviewer doesn't even know it. Something just doesn't sit right with them, in terms of how the student is presenting themselves in person, or, virtually, versus how they presented themselves in the written application. Okay. Just scrolling through because we have a lot of questions here. Okay. Oh, yeah. So Linda, what is the principal investigator? Is that the research person? Yes. So the principal investigator, sorry, is the person who heads up a research lab. Now, it isn't, not every student works directly with the principal investigator. If a student is in a large lab, they may not have a ton of contact with the principal investigator. That's completely okay. Whoever their most immediate supervisor is going to often usually be the one who's writing their letter of recommendation from their research. Sometimes what we do, if they're working, let's say, with a postdoc or with a lab assistant or someone else, what we have them do potentially is have that person write the letter and have the principal investigator co-sign the letter, or they write the letter together. So, this is sort of how we get around that. Okay. Okay. So regarding community college classes, again, are community college summer classes viewed negatively in any way by med schools? They are not viewed negatively. Medical schools do accept community college credits. I still would rather that students not take prerequisites, meaning biochemistry, organic chemistry, physics. I would rather they not take those classes at a community college. I think stats, I think you had mentioned stats before. I think stats for a math requirement is the one class that I would be okay with in terms of the student taking stats at a community college for their math requirement. Not every medical school has a math requirement. So, this isn't that. That's why I'm saying there's a little bit of leeway when it comes to math and community college credits. And especially if the student, I think you said your student was a neuroscience major, especially if they're a science major, and they're obviously going to be taking many upper level classes in the sciences. So they're proving that they can manage a rigorous scientifically based curriculum through their undergraduate curriculum. Okay. This is a good question. Does where an applicant complete his clinical research have an influence? For example, at a prestigious hospital. It isn't really the name of the hospital that is going to be impressive. What's going to be impressive is what the student does in that research experience, what their contributions are, how much impact they had, and what the letter of recommendation is from that research experience. So sometimes, actually, at more prestigious hospitals, it's going to be much tougher to get a position, and it's also going to be tougher to sort of compete for the work once you're there. This is why I think in many ways it's actually more beneficial to potentially get a research position at a smaller hospital, perhaps in a smaller lab, where the student is going to have more one-on-one time with the principal investigator, where they potentially are going to have even more opportunity to really make an impact. Maybe where their presence is valued more. I mean, we have had students who work at, very large research institutions in those labs. And sometimes, when they're working with a postdoc or something of that nature, that person may not like having someone working under them. They may have been assigned to have a student by their principal investigator, and there can be complications with that in terms of longevity of that experience. So there can often be really amazing benefits when you're working at, not an institution that isn't so prestigious. So, keep that in mind when you're looking for these positions. You really want to be asking, what are my roles and responsibilities going to be? What can I expect to get out of this? Will there potentially be any opportunities for me to present or to write articles? So you kind of want to get a sense of, how much the student is going to be valued in that position. All right. My son has a 510 MCAT on his first attempt and is having 6 courses this semester and not getting enough time to prepare for the MCAT as much as he wants to. He's registered for the MCAT next month. Would it be advisable to focus on the application or still prepare for the MCAT when it takes away from an early application? This is a tough question, Sujana. And, first of all, a 510 is a strong score. We would want to know what else he's done. We'd want to know where he goes to college, what his GPA is, what his other experiences are. Usually if somebody wants, and I would also want to know when that first MCAT date was, just because we find that when students take an MCAT if they turn right around and they just retake it again, unless there was something that they can identify why they underperformed on the initial attempt, we find that it's very, very rare that they bump their score when they take it so quickly again. We want the student to really, take the 3 months to prepare for the MCAT a second time and to really figure out what they need to do differently to bump the score significantly if he retakes it. And again, we would want to see the breakdown, but I would want him to bump that score by at least 3 points for the retake to really be worth it. So I think that you need to think about, does he want to apply early this year with the 510, or would he rather really take the time that is necessary to prepare for the MCAT to bump the score a significant amount and maybe apply next year instead? These are the types of conversations and the scenarios that we present to our students when we are faced with this. But we would want to understand what his overall competitiveness is with the 510, which again is a great score, depending on the state he's from, depending on what he's aiming for, depending on what his other accomplishments are. A retake may not be necessary. So, that's something to think about. All right, I'm going to answer one more question. Okay. I just, for the person who's asking the end of cycle question, I answered a question about that earlier, so you can watch the recording, and I think you'll find your answer there. Okay. Would you include athletic recognition during high school if a student competed at an international level, achieved international awards? I would include that. When a student is a super high achiever at an international or national level in high school, that is something that should be included on the med school application, because it just shows sort of what their overall level of achievement is, what type of person they are. Sometimes what we might do is if the student achieved at an international level at a sport, chances are they're still playing that sport, maybe as a club sport or maybe as an intramural, something of that nature. So we might actually have them include that as a hobby. And then in the hobby description, they also mention that, that they had achieved this very high level of accomplishment as a high school student. It's also possible, depending on their overall narrative and what else they have done on their path to medical school, we might have them mention this in the personal statement, possibly. So we would have to kind of know the full story. Okay. Hold on. Is there a way to look up data pertaining to the number of pre-med students from a specific undergraduate college acceptance into the different medical schools across the country? As far as I know, there is not. There's not a centralized database. There is a centralized database that will list how many pre-meds within sort of groupings apply from certain undergraduate colleges, but we don't, you'd have to look for this information from the medical schools themselves. There's not a centralized database as far as I know. All right. Okay. Could you suggest the most suitable community service activity for freshman year? I'm assuming this is in college. Get involved in the thing that interests you most. Truly, freshman year is a time to figure out how the student's going to manage their time, how they're going to manage their social life, how they're going to manage being away from their parents with no one bugging them to study, adjusting to college life, figuring out how to, schedule themselves, because, college is suddenly, it's like they have so much free time. And, we certainly see many, many students freshman year do not do so well. And it's because it's overwhelming. It takes them a little while to settle in. So get involved in the thing that is the most interesting to the student, truly. They will have plenty of time to explore and to find community service opportunities that more directly relate to their interests once they figure out what those interests are. If they already know what those interests are, great. Then find something in that interest that is also has a community service component to it as well. So I thank you all so much for being here. It was great to see everybody. We had a wonderful group of people here, a large group of people, and we had great questions. I encourage you all to join the Facebook group if you are not a part of it. I will be back next Thursday. I hope to see you all there. Keep going. It's just beginning. It's going to be an exciting year. And to everyone who's accepted to medical school, I'm super proud of you. You've all done so well. And I hope to see you all next week. Take care.